everyone, welcome back to the Red Path podcast series. Today, guys, this is our first show of the new year, so everyone, happy new year. And I know if you're like me, I was actually excited to get back to work and stop eating like an animal like I was the past couple of weeks. So it's good to be back. And I thought we would kick off the year with a topic of we're always talking about what to do. And today I thought we'd focus on some of the mistakes to avoid if you want to break into medical sales. And we're going to cover that today. Before we get into it, though, guys, make sure that if you do want to see this recording or any other podcast that we have, to go on our YouTube channel, Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching. You could just click the link right there and subscribe. It's 100% free. It gives you access to all our podcasts and other content that we have available. So definitely do that as soon as you can. Excuse me. Also, if you have any questions, please submit them from this moment on. James, our producer, will handle any of the questions that come in, and we'll address them, about halfway through the show. So please just put them into the chat, and James will take care of them. Whether it's on topic or off, nothing is off base here. You could ask whatever you want. And most importantly, guys, the Rep Path Academy. For all the individuals out there, if you guys are trying to break in, you're tired of the rejections, you're tired of the ghosting, you've been working for months, you get an interview here and there, you're not really making any traction. Now is the time, guys. There's no more excuses, no more delays saying, I'm going to wait till next quarter, I'm going to wait till after the new year. Now is the time, because believe me, people are going to start hiring from this day forward. It gets very busy in medical sales hiring. Most take a breather during the last couple of weeks because of the holidays, and they ramp up quickly. Just this morning alone, I was on the phone with a couple of different clients, and they're already talking about new openings that they want to get filled either at the end of the month or by the end of the quarter. So please go on reppath.com. It'll answer some of the common questions that you guys have about the program and also how we can help you break in. You can also see testimonials of candidates that have had success. Look at those videos, read all the information, and then if you're really interested and you really have the commitment and want to really break into this industry, reach out, set up a call with me, and we'll get you signed up and ready to go. So do all that, guys. And other than that, can I forget anything else, James? I usually do.
No, you got everything today.
All right,
a couple weeks off, and you nailed it, dude.
Thank you. So, all right, guys, let's start with some of the common things, common mistakes to avoid when you're trying to get into into the medical sales field. Excuse me. First thing you have to realize, guys, is, and a lot of reps, this is the first mistake, is not realizing that the whole process is a sample sales call. So everything that you do from the moment you start applying to jobs to getting an interview to accepting an offer, mimics and mirrors exactly what you do when you actually do have a sales position in this industry. So for example, when you're starting to look for openings, it's the same as prospecting physicians and calling on doctors. You're going to reach out to customers. When you're doing medical sales, you're doing the same thing in this industry. You're seeing openings, and then you're starting to reach out and network with individuals in the industry. So what I don't want to see you do, and this is a big mistake, guys, is networking just to network. Getting on phone calls with individuals that are in the industry just to say, I spoke to 3 more people today, or I spoke to 10 people this week. Guys, if there isn't an opening in sight, or if that person can't help you, you don't want to waste your time just contacting people and having conversations of what they think of the industry and what is it like at their company. I mean, doing that once in a while is fine, but start with an opening first. Okay, start there and make sure that you're qualified, or at least realistically potentially qualified. If you don't meet at least 50% of those requirements, and I think it should be up to 60 or 70%, because there's too many candidates out there, guys, that they can ignore you forever. You want to make sure that you're at least somewhat of a fit and meet at least half of those requirements. And then when you send your resume for that app, for whatever opening it is, to start contacting immediately individuals that work at that company, sales reps, managers, different personnel. I don't care who it is. Ideally, you want to call on the sales reps that work with the manager you're going to interview with, but it could be other individuals there too. But start having conversations with people that are in that division, that are in the know, that know what it's like to work with that hiring manager. Have those conversations. That's networking. Networking, just calling people. For instance, if you're going to have there's a job opening in New Jersey for the cardiac division of Medtronic. Okay, you're not going to just start calling Medtronic people that are in their urology division or their orthopedic division or whatever it is. You want to make sure that you're calling the people that are working in that specific division in that area. The closer that you get to that opening and speaking to those individuals that are close to that opening, that's the real value. That's how you network. Excuse me. I need water. Sorry about that. Those are the individuals. That's real networking. Okay. You can keep yourself busy again a whole lifetime just contacting people at Medtronic and having conversations. Your goal is to get a job. So if you're not getting closer to that goal, then it's wasting time. And you don't want to waste time because you will burn out. But if you're having these conversations, you're building a real network, and you're building real relationships that are going to help you get a job. So start there. Don't network just to network. Network with intention is the takeaway from that point. Excuse me. Next, when you're actually doing these conversations. So again, this is all a sales call. So when you call on a doctor, where this mirrors, you might not get the doctor, but there's other individuals at that office or at that facility that can still help influence that doctor in his decision making. So a lot of times you don't see Dr. Jones, for example, and then the receptionist says, "Sorry, Dr. Jones can't see you." So what do a lot of reps do? They leave their card, they leave some promotional material, and go, "I'll try back again next week." Guys, don't do that. Okay. Excuse me. You don't want to just give them an excuse to get your card and throw it out, because that's what they do. They get the material, they throw it out. They're not actually handing it to the doctor. If they do, you just hit the lottery, because that's very rare. But you want to make sure that you don't leave there without actually making some sort of impact. A lot of reps don't ask for anyone else. They just leave. But you want to make sure you do that. Ask for the nurse. Ask for an office manager. Ask for a PA. Some assistants. There's someone else that's there that can still find value in your messaging. So be prepared and have that backup plan, because again, when you're not going to call the hiring manager up before the interview, you need to speak to people that know that hiring manager, because they're going to give you the tips on what that hiring manager likes and dislikes. Same as in medical. I've had so many nurses that tell me, "Joe, don't pull out a detail aid in front of Dr. Jones." Or one of the things that I used to do in the operating room, I had a laser pointer to point to the different equipment. Never had a problem. I did that with one doctor. I didn't ask ahead of time. Doctor freaked out. Said, "Don't use that stupid thing. Get that stupid laser out of my face." Freaked out on me. Now, had I've known to speak to one of the nurses first and see that, no, don't pull that out because it's going to piss him off, I would have never have done that. But these are little tips that it's going to help you in the interview process, and it's also going to help you to really sell when you get out there. So this is something else that they are evaluating. Okay. Sorry, guys. Anyway, next, when we actually get the actual, when you're actually getting your resume out there, all right, we do not want to do, this is a common mistake everyone makes. It's called spray and pray. Get your resume, spray it out to anyone and everyone you know, and then cross your fingers and pray that someone gets back to you. Guys, this doesn't work anymore. You're going to hear a lot of people say it's a numbers game. That's not true. It used to be that way. If you send your resume out 10, 15, 20 years ago, got it in enough people's hands, eventually someone will get back to you. But now there's so much noise. It's so easy to apply to jobs that if you don't become more intentional, if you're not developing relationships and networking at the same time, if you're not applying to roles that you're a good fit for, apply to less roles. Don't spray and pray. The lesson is apply to less. If you're typically going to apply to 100 jobs, I want to see you apply to 10 or even 5. But when you're applying, you're networking. And that's where people don't do enough. Okay, so networking doesn't mean speaking to one person. At the Red Path Academy, we make sure if you're going to send a resume out to someone or a company, you got to speak to at least 3 people at that company. Because sometimes, guys, they're going to tell you stuff that is more than, it might not be all positive. They might say, hey, listen, I'm looking to leave. You don't want to come here. Or they're going to give you those insights like we talked about at the beginning. But you got to at least speak to a certain, at least 3 number of people to learn more, because that's where you're going to find that value. So spray and pray doesn't work. You want to be less, but more focused on the networking when you're applying. So make sure you're doing that. The numbers game, again, it's too easy. You guys have seen easy apply, whatever the different terms they have now, but you could just click, send your resume, click, 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 click. You realize that also thousands of other people are doing the same thing. So how is anyone standing out? Like I said, they're networking at the same time. Those are the resumes that are going to get on people's desks because other people are going to help push it along. Okay. When you guys hear, this is another common myth. It's not that it's a mistake, but I just want to eliminate this myth about AI and how certain words in AI, this is what I hear. I actually heard it this morning, that AI is keeping my resume because I'm not putting the correct wording in there. And that's why no one's seeing the resume. Guys, that's bullshit. That's nonsense. It's an excuse. Okay. When we're not having success and we're hitting roadblocks, we like to make excuses. We all do this. Trust me, that is not why you're not recognized. It's probably much more involved that your resume isn't showing enough of your results. You're not a fit for the background, or you're not illustrating why you're a fit. You're just sending your resume. Okay, so make sure, stop spray and pray, spray and pray, be more intentional, and focus on less opportunities. Okay. Next, when it comes to your actual resume, common mistake that everyone makes. Okay. Talk too much about daily activities and less about results. Switch that around, guys. It's more about results than daily activities. For instance, stop giving me all these bullets about collaborating with the marketing team, held presentations to key opinion leaders around the state of New Jersey. Excuse me. Effective, marketing penetration through, local territories in XYZ counties. Like, these are activities, guys. This doesn't tell me anything on what the results were. Okay. It's the same as if you're coming home from school and telling your parents, yeah, I took math. I took a biology course this semester. I took a U.S. history course. They're going to go, that's great. How did you do? So don't just give me all these daily activities. Give me the results. I want to see where you're ranked. I want to see how you did with your percent to quota. What was your growth? What awards did you win? When the resumes that are loaded like that, loaded with those results, we talk about this a lot, guys, how it's got to look at the back of a sports card. The more that it looks and loaded with those results, the better and more recognizable is that resume. The more it's going to stand out. If you give paragraph after paragraph about activities and nonsense, a lot of you put, when you're describing your role, you give a 3 or 4 sentences about the company and where the company's located and what they specialize in, and it's how many reps there are. I mean, I've seen some crazy paragraphs that look like they were cut and paste right from a website promoting the company. Guys, no one cares about the company. They care about what you did at the company. What was your role at the company? So again, don't fill it in with all this wording because you're going to bore the reader of the resume. Or worse, they're going to overlook your resume because they're not seeing the results. So the more numbers that you have on a resume, the more likely a recruiter or hiring manager is going to recognize that and want to move you forward for an interview. So enough with the daily activities and too much writing. Focus more on the results. Excuse me. So, okay, perfect. Sorry, I have some notes. I'm a little disorganized today. I apologize, guys. Um, Again, another thing with the resume, stop making it too fancy, guys. And the reason being, if you make it too fancy, if you put too many, um, if a lot of you now are putting your picture on the resume. Now, I'm not a fan of that. I don't think you should waste your time doing that. But if you want to do that, that's fine. I mean, very simply, if you put your LinkedIn profile link in there, then you're going to be able to see your picture, which we'll talk about in a little bit. You don't need to put it on the resume. You don't need to put all these graphs and charts and colors, because the reason being, guys, you don't want it to take away from your results. Your results is the main point of your resume. The more noise you put on there, the more hiring managers aren't going to see it, or worse, recruiters aren't going to see it to even pass you along. So make sure you get rid of all that stuff, because another thing that a lot of recruiters aren't going to tell you, everyone has an ATS, an applicant tracking system. That's where we get all the resumes and store them. So later on, we save it. It parses the resumes so that it's broken down into searchable terms and words. So later on, when I do have an opening in XYZ city, in Chicago, in Boston, in Miami, wherever, I type in the city, I type in a couple of the criteria, and then resumes are going to pop up. What they're not going to tell you is, if you give a very busy resume loaded with graphs and pictures and colors, sometimes when you go to save it into that applicant tracking system, it doesn't save because it's too noisy and the system can't recognize all the different graphs and charts and everything else you put in there. So then it doesn't save. But the average recruiter isn't going to call you back up because they're too busy and say, hey, by the way, I don't know what was wrong. I couldn't save your resume into my ATS. They're not going to do that, guys. So make sure that you don't have a loud resume. The more simplified the format is, and the more that it's focused, when you look at that resume, excuse me, your eyes shouldn't go to your professional summary. It should be focused on your experiences and your accomplishments, those results. That's where your eyes want to go. I don't care about your volunteer work. That's not the most important thing. While that may help in conversation and interview, you want to get an interview first. So you got to focus on those results. So don't make it loud with all those charts and graphs, pictures, all that stuff. It's not going to help you guys. So make sure you cut that out. Next, when it comes to the actual interview, okay? A lot of you guys, you either don't tell enough about your background, you don't have a story. Too many reps read their resume. And I don't mean actually sitting there and they're reading it to you, but they basically just tell you the information that's in the resume. There's nothing more added to it. And what that does, guys, that bores the listener. They already have your resume in front of them. When they say, tell me a little about yourself, tell me, walk me through your resume. They don't literally mean walk you through line by line, but you also got to tell a story, give an opening. And a lot don't do this. They get right into the resume. I graduated from XYZ University. I got my first job here. No, give us something before all that. Tell me a story about why you wanted to get into medical sales. What passion do you have? Because when you show passion, guys, those are the people they want to make offers to, because they know that you're committed for this. You have a deep passion or drive to really be in this industry. You're not looking for another job. So make sure you're telling a story that's impactful and attracts the listener. It's like when you go see a movie, the opening scene. James, I gotta give you a movie reference, buddy.
Starting the year off hot, Joe. I love it. Let's go.
I mean, granted, this is a horrible movie in terms of, what happened in the scene, but it was one of those like wow openings. Some of you guys are too young to probably even know this movie, but came out in the late 90s. Scream, right, James?
They remade it already.
They already remade it. They had 22 screams. They remade it, but the first scream, the first opening scene, where they are quizzing her about, Nightmare or Friday the 13th, and she gets the answers wrong, and then before you know it, they wind up, murdering the boyfriend. They murder her, and then the parents see her like hanging from the tree in the background. The whole first scene is so chilling, so graphic, everything, but it leaves you like, wow. Even the music, everything is like in your face. But I remember that being like a movie that from that first scene, everyone was like blown away. Now they want to see the rest of the movie. It's the same thing with your story and your background. You got to catch them. And I'm not saying you got to have some scary horror opening for your story, but give something that is more, it's interesting and shows that passion, because that's going to make them want to listen more and hear more. And this is a skill. We teach this at the academy. You got to spend some time in this, guys, because it does make the difference from you moving forward or not. If it's boring, there's no substance. Again, they don't want to listen to it, because back to what I said at the beginning, everything resembles a sales call during the interview process. So if you can't engage people with the story during the interview process, how are you going to engage physicians? How are you going to engage customers? Well, yeah, this is a very clinical sale in medical sales. No one's doubting that. But if you just constantly come in and just constantly clinical, and don't tie it to something real life, or if you're just throwing studies in people's faces every day, you're going to bore them. A lot of times doctors, you could talk clinical, but talk about a patient that you just had, and how this helped this patient overcome whatever, issues they were having, whatever it was. But when you tell more of a story, it's easier to listen to. So get better at your storytelling. Make sure you do have that, because that's what sales really is. And that's how you engage your customers. So I don't know if you like that reference, James. I know it was a little morbid.
I like it so much better than The Devil Wears Prada and your other girly movies. So yes, I approve.
All right, we're not even going there, because they're still great movies. But even though they are coming out with the sequel in a couple months.
Are they really? Jeez.
Yes, they are.
Nobody asked for this, Joe.
No, I know. They only make hundreds of millions on a movie, or they always pick shitty movies to make sequels of. But anyway, back to the talk. One of the biggest things, guys, this isn't even medical sales. This is any sales job. Talking too much. Okay, I get it. We all get nervous in interviews. We're excited. You want to say the right thing. You got to feel like you got to get all this information out, and you ramble on. You don't want to ramble on. Guys, this is where you have to practice. It's so important. You have to practice whenever you have an interview. Don't just wing it. I had someone reach out to me on LinkedIn the other day. Joe, quick advice. I feel like I'm not getting anywhere because I'm prepping. I feel like this next interview, I should just go in there and wing it. Guys, I'm totally against it. It doesn't work, because when you wing it, you start rambling. You do. I got to be honest. Today, with some of my notes, because I'm back to back with calls, I had another podcast right before this call, and I'm kind of rambling on with some of my thoughts. So you don't want to wing it. The more prepared you are, the better. And you don't want to ramble on, because if you ramble on, A, you're boring the shit out of them. But B, they're thinking back. How is this person going to interact with my customers, with my doctors? And if you're going to ramble on to me, it means you're going to ramble on to the doctors. They don't want that. So don't stop rambling on. Be more concise and effective with your messaging. Read the room, guys. If you got someone that's looking down, looking at their watch, checking their phone as they're talking to you, you don't have them engaged. You got to start redirecting, because you're going to lose them, or they're going to just smile and say, "Oh, it sounds great." You didn't make any impact. So start, if you're going to talk, ask more questions. We're all guilty of this. We talk too much and we don't ask more questions. You know, I've said this on many podcasts. We teach this in the academy. I challenge all of you, your first call with the doctor, do your best not to mention your product. You should be in there just totally fact finding. That first call is learning about the doctor, the practice, the patients that they work with. That's what you really want to find out. The more questions you can ask, the more information, and find out what the doctor's key drivers are. What do they really care about? You know, because I can assure you, it's not the same thing that your company is telling you every time. You know, all these companies, they do a great job training people. They do. But a lot of times we lose focus because we make it more about our products, you know, what we think the value is, or what our panel of doctors that helped us launch the marketing plan, or, you know, what do they want to hear? And that could be helpful. But sometimes what one doctor wants to hear is different than what another doctor wants to hear. So if you're not asking those questions more during these calls, you're not going to find that out. So make sure, talk less, ask more questions. That's the takeaway. Even in the interviews, guys, okay? Because in an interview, you don't want to have 2 or 3 questions memorized in your head. Have them written down. Have 10, 15 written down. And it's okay during the interview, you know, because before every interview, I ask them, do you mind if I take notes? No one's going to say no, guys. You know, no one's going to say, yeah, please don't take any notes. No, of course they're going to say, please, go ahead. You don't want to sit there and just be scribbling every word they say. But if something comes up that you're like, oh, wait, I got a question, write it down. You can ask it later on. But ask those questions because you got to make it a two-way street, guys. It's not just one way with them just grilling you the whole time. They want to see that you have questions too. You know, and you know the old saying, there's no dumb questions? That's bullshit. There are stupid questions. So don't let anyone make you believe that there aren't stupid questions. You don't want to ask dumb questions during an interview. You don't want to talk anything about vacations. What's your PTO policy? Like, guys, you don't ask that on the first interview. To be honest with you, I don't even like to ask questions about compensation on the first interview. Because before you get that interview, the HR person or the recruiter is going to tell you about the compensation. You know, they're going to say the range is from 100 to 120 base. The bonuses range from X to Y. They're going to give you a roundabout. On that first interview, it's about you proving to them why you're the best fit and what you want to get that next round. You don't want to ask stupid questions about, you know, do I get 2 or 3 weeks vacation? No, that's a stupid question. Not on the first interview, guys. You're going to turn them off because you're already thinking about taking time off when it should be focused on what value are you bringing to this company. So make sure that you are asking intelligent questions, and we can help you with that too. You know, but you want to go in there prepared with them written out. Don't wing it. Too many reps wing it, guys. The more you prepare, the better you're going to be. Because even, I don't know if you guys are like this, even when I studied for exams and there were things that I'm memorizing at first, but then you learn it and then it becomes second nature. So the more you prepare, sometimes people get nervous that I don't want to seem like I'm a robot, like I'm repeating a memorized line. That's not true. Because the more you know it, the more it comes out naturally. You don't have to think about it. And that's the way your answers should be. That should be the way the questions that you ask. So the more you prepare, the better you're going to be. You're not going to come off like a robot. Okay? And you got to practice, guys. If you can't find a friend or someone to start going over some of this with you, you know, obviously that's what we specialize in. But you got to practice with someone, even if you got to use your phone and record yourself. You have to, because you're going to be shocked by what you think you sound like as opposed to what you do in real life. You know, so you want to work out all those kinks before you get in front of those hiring managers. Next in the interviews, getting defensive. I see this a lot, guys. You know, they want to, you're being tested, guys. You're going to have doctors in the field say some nasty shit. They might outright say, your product sucks. or I only use it for X, but it sucks for Y. I mean, I've had this. I had the doctor actually say, for one patient type, you guys work great for. For this, you're horrible. I would never use you for it. Now, if I jump in and go, oh, but wait, doctor, that's not true, and I would, and again, you want to say that, want to be like, who the hell told you that? That's nonsense, But if you react that way, your doctor's going to be like, whoa, this guy's getting all, in my face defensive. I'm not gonna have him back in my office, So you got to absorb the blows, and find out more. Of course, you're going to go, oh, that's interesting, doctor. What makes you say that? And then let them explain themselves. Same in the interview. A lot of times you're going to get hit with the objection, which they can say to anyone, you don't have enough experience. I think you're great, Joe, but honestly, the candidates you're going against, they don't have enough. They have way more experience than you do. You don't want to get all flustered, start sweating, and start getting defensive. And that happens a lot. Even people, sometimes they give a good answer, but you see on their face, they start to get mad, get upset that they're giving them an objection. Guys, that's what sales is. So if you can't handle that, this is not the industry for you. So you want to be able to handle those objections better, even with your face. This is why recording yourself is key, because you could see sometimes when you record yourself in a mock interview, you're going to be like, wow, look at my mannerism. Look, I'm looking down, or I'm taking a deep breath when they're saying that. Like, you watch people sometimes, guys, it's actually amazing. They think they're handling it well, but when you say something, you see them breathe in. So these are things that you don't know unless you practice and you try it, but you got to make sure you can't overreact and get defensive. It's the worst thing you can do. So work on your objection handling. If you go in there, right, and this is what we always do in our mock interviews, how can I tear you apart? That's what we're going to do. I'm going to look at your resume, your background, and try to pick it apart. Try to look at all the holes in there. Now, they might not do that on every interview. It might be a very nice, pleasant interview, no big deal. But I want to make sure that our candidates are prepared for all those little red flags that these guys can come back at. That's what I want to make sure you're prepared for. So make sure you're doing that. What is something that, if it's your experience, how are you going to address that? If you live an hour outside the territory, that's going to be an objection. How are you going to address it? How are you going to handle all these objections? So you have to be honest with yourselves and really pick that apart. Pick yourself apart. And then I'm telling you, you're going to go into those interviews and you're going to be ready for anything. You're going to be calm because there's nothing they can ask you that you're not ready for. I mean, that's why, guys, the more you interview, the better you get. Everyone always would say that. It's true. So imagine now you're practicing in between. You're going to be a stud. By your second interview, you're going to be ready for a lot. Never knowing by your fourth or fifth on what you're going to be prepared for. It shows. But the more that you don't practice, you never get ahead. You have the same mistakes coming up, the same facial expressions, the same, stutters and but whatever, you're trying to look for words to say. Guys, you're not going to feel that way if you keep practicing. So make sure you're doing that and eliminate some of those facial reactions and everything else we're talking about, because that's going to really help you stand out. I'm going to stop right now and take a break, get a drink of water, and James, seeing if we have any questions.
Joe, that cold weather really did a number on you. Clearing your throat so much. Jersey must have been rough.
My wife's been sick for the past week, and she refuses to go to the City MD down here just to get cough medicine, and now it's starting to affect me. So
it's the worst. We got Tavion James. What's a big mistake you see career switchers make when trying to break into the industry?
What's a big mistake that I see career switchers make trying to break in? They don't, that's a great question, Tavion. They don't do enough research about the specific role that they're getting into so they know what they're really getting into. Now, for instance, there could be a lot of you guys, when you're breaking in, you look for associate or clinical specialist roles. Now, when you get a clinical specialist opening, that could mean something that it's very clinical and all your responsibilities are covering cases. Or it could mean, yeah, you're supposed to cover cases, but you also have sales responsibilities too. So you're going to be doing sales calls, excuse me, helping that territory manager in many different ways. If you don't do your research and speak to reps at that company that you're applying to really have a real understanding of what it is the day to the life really look like, day in the life really look like, you can answer it incorrectly. You could have all clinical responsibilities and then in the interview say like, well, I'm really good at selling. I'm great, at convincing doctors to switch to, or convincing customers to switch to my product. I'm great at objection handling. And the hiring manager is sitting there going, that's great. You're not going to have to do any of that for that role. I need someone that's a team player because you're going to be covering cases sometimes till after midnight. Now you got to talk about what transferable skills you bring from your other industry that makes you a great team player, that makes you show that you have sacrifice and all those other skills that'll make you a great clinical specialist who's going to be just covering cases. So a lot of reps, they don't put in that research. They research the company, they Google, they do ChatGPT. They're not going to get the information on that unless they speak to reps to know exactly what it's like a day in the life. And when you can come in with solutions based on those real challenges, that's how you get recognized. So that's something that you want to avoid when you're trying to break in. And some of the things that you want to start doing, it's getting on the phone with those reps and knowing what you're really getting into, because it's going to change your answers.
Joe, is applying online basically a waste of time now, or am I missing something?
It's a waste of time if you're not networking at the same time. You can always, again, guys. I mean, the majority of applications are done online. It's very rarely that you're in a bar somewhere or you're out and you have your resume and you just hand it to someone, or you text them your resume. You're applying online. But where everyone falls short, they don't do that networking that we keep talking about. They just send the resume, the spray and pray. That's a waste of time. Read the requirements, guys. The majority of you do not. You'll tell me you are, but you're not. If you're opening up an email, the first thing that you put in there is, while I don't meet the XYZ requirements, I make up for it with adjective, adjective, adjective. You might as well get that send it to, send that resume to your dog or whoever, because they're not going to read it, guys.
You can send it to me.
You can send it to James. He's not going to read it either.
Nope.
But same thing. It really makes no sense, guys. You don't make sure that you're reading those requirements and then putting bullet points. What I like to see is send a resume to whatever opening, and then when you're saying it's a recruiter, get the requirements that they have listed. Sometimes, guys, it's 2 or 3 requirements. Sometimes it could be 10. Cut and paste, put it in the body of the email, then in a different color or a little indentation underneath each, put how you're a fit. Quickly, not War and Peace. If you graduate they're asking for a 4-year degree, put bachelor's degree from Villanova University. Graduated with a bachelor's degree from Villanova University in, 1820, whenever the hell I graduated. Put that in there. Just simple, quick. I'm telling you, the more you do that, you're going to get recruiters that respond, because you're making their life easier, and their job is to make the hiring manager's life easier by sending them qualified candidates.
We have, Joe, in an interview, is it bad to admit you don't know something?
Absolutely not. It's much, much better. Always admit, if you don't know something, guys, don't try to fake it, because if they see that you're full of shit and you're trying to lie your way out of something or fake it, you will 100% be passed on. They will not come back to you. So just say, I'm sorry, I don't know that acronym, or I don't know what you mean by that. Can you please explain? Or no, I don't know what that is. Can you tell me? That's okay. But you're going to get caught if you're trying to keep faking it till you make it during the interview. If you don't know what something means, you're just going to sound stupid. I mean, I remember I worked with a a girl that the doctor was asking her about something under the skin, and she was talking about just oh no, you could just tape that right onto the skin like that. She was talking about he was talking about something like truly in the body. It's almost like, to make it simple, like you want to put something on your heart and someone's saying put a band-aid on it. Like, it sounded ridiculous. Ridiculous. So you don't want to do that, because obviously I was there for that. I looked at the doctor, he looked at me, like rolled his eyes, like, the hell was that answer? Because she didn't know what he meant. So they're going to think that way. Again, it's back to being a sales call. If you're going to BS here, there's no way they're going to have you BS their doctors, because that could be catastrophic for the company, obviously for the rep, but more importantly for the company. So don't lie, just say it. Is this Tavion again? James?
I hit the mute button. Sorry.
It's okay.
So when I'm speaking with reps, how can I, as a candidate, add value to that rep or manager? From Tavion.
Yeah, that's great. Great question. Ask them. Ask them what they're looking for. Ask them exactly what they want for this role. What's the type of candidate that does well? One of the questions I like, if you can straight up, even, I like this more for in the interview, when you're asking the hiring manager, go, okay, well, I got a question for you. If I get this role, what if you made me the offer and I got the role and I'm crushing my number? I'm one of the top reps in the company. That first year, I'm number one. What did I do well? So it'll let them explain, put it back in their lap on what they're going to give you tips on what other reps have done to be so successful, but it's going to give you the skills and the attributes that they're looking for in a top-notch rep. But straight up, just ask them. Ask them exactly what you asked me. Ask those reps on the call. Who are the top reps? What do they do well? What is this hiring manager looking for, in a candidate for this role? What could I do to stand out? Did you interview with this hiring manager before you got hired? Okay, great. You did? Okay. What did you do to get the job? Straight up say that, because some of the things they can tell you, oh, we're looking for someone that is a team player. Okay, great. My previous role, I was a team player because I covered other people's shifts. I mean, you could be a bartender. Be like, I'm a team player because every time someone called out, I'm the first one to cover their shift, because I want to make sure that the business comes first. Just a little story like that, guys. Again, that's coming from a bartender that you think, oh, it has nothing to do with sales. It's not true. They just showed quickly how one of their transferable skills of teamwork, they've been successful at the past, and how they can bring that here. So find out what those things are, but also when you're on the call with them, again, these aren't just quick phone calls, guys. You got to treat these like important interviews too, because if you bomb that, they're not going to want to push you forward with that hiring manager. But if you do well and you're likable on those calls, and they feel that you do bring value, because you're going to tell them how you bring the value, but you're going to find out what they're looking for first, they are going to go to that hiring manager like, hey, this guy Tavion reached out to me a couple of times. I finally spoke to him. He's pretty sharp. I think he has a great background. He was able to show me a lot of the things that we're looking for. I think he'd be a great fit. I really think you should give him a chance. Trust me, this is what happens behind the scenes. So that, I hope that helps, Davion, but that's my advice. You want to ask those questions, be direct, find out, I want this job. What would you do if you're me to get it? What can I do to stand out? You'll be amazed sometimes how a simple question like that, they could say, oh yeah, man, don't do a 30, 60, 90, but if you're going to do it, do this, or make sure don't come in and just constantly throw presentation, and all paperwork in front of the hiring manager. Talk to him more realistic. He likes to have conversations. You never know, but until you ask him those questions, you're not going to know either. But that's really how that would be my advice when you're speaking to him.
We have what is something you should never say in a cold LinkedIn message?
What is something you should never say? I mean, there's a lot of things. in a cold
Well,
LinkedIn.
list off a couple.
Let's the one thing that I get that really does like get me aggravated as on the recruiting side, and I get this message a lot on LinkedIn, Joe, I'm interested, or I'm interested in the role. Sometimes they just put I'm interested, drives me crazy. Drives me crazy because you're just wasting my time. You're not trying to sell yourself. You're not trying to try to bring any value that you could add. You're just telling me that you're interested. And now you want me to get on a call with you when I have 50 other people that just reached out to me in the past hour that I can get on calls with. I can't do that all day. So, again, when you're contacting these recruiters, guys, I used to look at recruiters like, oh, it's so easy. They work from home and they fill jobs, they get paid good money. Like, no, guys, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. They're on the phone constantly. So you got to realize, what do I need to do first to get the recruiter to get on a phone with me? You got to think that way. So when you're doing this outreach, think of it when you read that, whatever you put, is that enough for someone to want to have a phone call with me? Right? I mean, simply if I give 2 or 3 requirements in a job posting and someone is just reaching out to me, there better be some solution or value that they are addressing those 2 requirements that I mentioned and how they're a fit for me to want to get on the phone with them. Same with these other reps that you're reaching out to. If you just say, or I'll give you one, definitely don't put, can I pick your brain for 30 minutes? Guys, don't put a time on there unless you're going to put 2 to 3 minutes, or do you have a quick sec? I'm okay with that, but don't put, can I give you a call and discuss this role? Can I take 20 or 30 minutes of your time? No one is going to get on that phone call. But I'm telling you, once you get some of these guys on the phone and they start to like you, they could spend an hour on the phone with you and not bat an eye because they like you now. But if you introduce it with that requirement that like, hey, I'm going to need you for 20, 30 minutes, you're going to scare them away. So don't mention that. Keep it short and sweet, that you just want to learn more about the role, and pick their brain for a second. Make it simple, make it conversational, but don't put the minutes in because that'll scare them off. And these are just a couple. I know we can go on for hours about that, but those are the main ones that are coming to mind right now.
Well, they have a follow-up question. What's the best message you've seen that actually works?
The best message is, number one, if you're looking at your phone, okay, so anyone that has their phone up, if you have to scroll down to get to the rest of the message, too long. It should be able to read the whole message by looking at your phone. So if it's more than that, you went too long. Okay. So the best messages for me, again, these are people that are trying to get me on the phone to describe why they're a good fit, because that's what comes to mind. That's the most people that reach out to me. The best are addressing the needs that are put into that job posting. That's number one. But if it's something unrelated to the job and you just want to get on the phone, short and sweet, guys. Very just natural, almost like you're texting a friend without the curses and like the dirty, stupid comments that you might do with some of your friends to make a joke. Obviously, you have to be a little professional here, but you want to just be short and sweet where, hey, I saw the job opening in XYZ territory. I think I'd be a great fit. Would love to pick your brain, to learn more about the role. What's a good time? Today or tomorrow or Wednesday or Friday, whatever. Give the options, always give it an option. It's an old sales technique, but it works. Don't say what's good time for you this week. Give options, guys. They usually are best because people usually like to pick one. If you make them think, they'll say, I'll get back to you. I don't know. It's a crazy week. Just give 2 options so they have to choose one, or a third one to choose one. But usually those are the most effective. But short and sweet is always the most effective.
We have, how long should you wait before following up for the second time?
Well, first of all, if you want to make sure that before you leave that interview, you want to find out what the next steps are. So you never can leave an interview. You're always trying to close them, guys. Because if you're not closing for the job, you have to close for the next step. So I always like to, before we don't have to get into closing on this exact for this question, but you always find out. So okay, so what is the next step in the process? Or how does the rest of the interview process look? Okay, Joe. Well, we're going to probably bring back, we're going to evaluate all these candidates, and then we'll do a second round next Tuesday, starting next Tuesday, where we'll bring in 3 to 5 candidates. And then the final round, we'll bring the final 2 to the vice president, and then we'll make a decision. So when should I hear back by? Well, we should know something by Tuesday. Okay, great. So at least now you have some sort of a timeline, guys, because you don't want to leave there. And this happens a lot. People are excited. The interview went well. You felt like you said good things during the interview. You had a good rapport with that hiring manager. You shake their hands, like, hey, Joe, we still got more people to meet with, but we'll get back to you by next week. Okay, great. I look forward to hearing from you. That's bad, guys. Don't do that. Okay. Again, they might say that and really mean it. They could be testing you. Okay. They want to see that. Is that how you're going to leave off? And just same with the doctor. Again, goes back to the sales call. The doctor says to you, all right, Joe, I'll see if I have any patients that I can prescribe this drug to this week, and I'll get back to you. Or, yeah, Joe, your medical device, I think it sounds really interesting. I'll let you know when I have a case coming up, and I'll get back to you. If you go, okay, great, doctor, that sounds awesome. You're never hearing from them again, guys. They're not getting back to you. They're getting back to patients and their busy day. The last thing they're thinking about is Joe Licata and his medical device, because I didn't close them. So make sure you're doing that and getting the commitment. Okay, because once you have that commitment and when the next follow-up, you should hear something by Tuesday. If you don't hear by Tuesday, then get back to them. They could say, hey, we're going to talk about it tonight, and we should have an answer by tomorrow. If you don't hear anything by tomorrow, you got to follow up with them. So the way you leave off on them to answer the question is that's going to dictate when you get back to them. And if you don't do that, then you're up shit's creek, because now you got to figure out, you never followed up with them. I mean, you never left off with them on when you should follow up to begin with. So you're off on the wrong foot. So make sure you're doing that ahead of time, and then that's going to dictate when to get back to them.
Tavion asked, is it possible for a strange candidate to get rejected because they are networking the wrong way, not because of lack of ability?
I mean, can they, I mean, anything is possible, but can you get rejected for networking the wrong way? Yeah, you could be networking and talking yourself out of the position. If they're asking you, if they're telling you all the things that they're looking for in this role, and you're not even paying attention to that, and just saying, yeah, I think I'd be a great fit. Yeah, I'd be really good. You're not addressing what any of their concerns are. You're not even listening, and you're not telling them why you're a great fit. You're just saying, I'm a great fit. I mean, I've seen that happen where people aren't selling themselves or selling themselves to that individual. Yeah, they're probably not going to get back to them. Like, they never addressed any of the objections. They didn't talk about why they're a good fit. They just said, yeah, it'd be great. A lot of times when people ramble on too much on these calls and make it about them, not what they can bring to the company, to the position, they just keep talking about themselves. Trust me, guys, no one wants to hear that. They want to hear about you, but how you are a fit for the role. Why the hiring manager should listen to you. Why should this rep go back and tell his hiring manager about you? It's because you're so great? I don't want to hear that. I want to say no, because you told me a couple of the things that you're looking for, and here's why I'm a fit. So make it more about them and their challenges and how you can solve them than about yourself and why you're so great. Because I've seen that is one of the main reasons why people talk themselves out of jobs or out of opportunities.
We have Joe. Is taking a step back in title ever a smart move?
It's sometimes it could happen just because, for instance, I've seen people that get promoted to a district manager or a regional sales manager, and then they realize it's not all it's cracked up to be. where they get a higher base, but their overall comp is lower than what they were making as a sales rep. I mean, that happens, or they could be working with, they realize, wow, that's a pain in the ass to really, manage other people and worry about their results and what they're doing on a daily basis. I like to just worry about myself. I'm happier doing that. I do see that. So sometimes they could say, you know what? No, I want to go back to being an individual contributor because I can make so much more money and I don't have to deal with other people worried about what they're doing and not doing. So it could make sense for you. So yeah, sometimes it could be, I want to take a step back because financially it's better. I want to take a step back because I have more freedom. I mean, all of us guys, well, when you're young, you always want to keep progressing until you're the CEO of the company. And then as you get older, you're like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm happy where I'm at, or I have different, my kids play multiple sports. I want to be and see some of their events. I don't want to be traveling around the country going to meetings. So it might make sense to take a step back. And companies understand that, guys. I mean, a lot of these VPs, hiring managers, they have families. They know the realities of the things that are good and the things that suck about the job. So if you're realistic and you have real concerns about why you took a step back, that's okay. But if you want to keep progressing, unfortunately, if you keep, you're not going to be able to do that more than once where you want to go backwards. And then now you want to go back. It's going to be more challenging when you do take steps backwards to go forward again in management. If you keep progressing and that's what you want to stay in management, great. If it's not for you, that's great too. But it is harder when you do want to get back to management. Not saying it's impossible, but it does make it harder.
I got two more for you today, Joe. Hold on, where'd that one go? How much should culture factor into your decision?
So culture, I have an interesting take on culture because some people may not agree with this, but I think your manager makes the culture. That's where you want it. That's where again, it comes back. A lot of these answers, guys, are based on what the information you get from these other reps when you're doing your due diligence during the interview process. You want to speak to them because the culture, everyone thinks like, culture is set by the president or the CEO, and then it trickles down and everyone follows that. It's not always the case. I mean, I've worked at companies where I've had amazing managers where I would say the culture here is incredible. And then I had nightmare managers where I said, I hate it here. And the only thing that changed was that manager. So for me, it's more directly related by your manager. Culture definitely exists. It's a real thing. But I would worry more and get those conversations of what it's like to work with that manager than what the culture is as a whole, because you might not feel that because a manager can, they do have some leeway to manage the way they like to manage, and it could be great and it could suck. So make sure you're focusing more on what is it with that manager, what it's like to work for them, because that's the person you're going to be dealing with the whole time. You're not going to be dealing with the CEO or these other people that created the culture. You're going to be working with that person directly. You want to know what it's like to work for them.
Joe Crawford put 100 on the. He put 100 on the manager dictating culture, macro versus micro culture. The last question I have is from Tavion, sorry. At what point should I pivot roles, trauma associate, clinical, instead of forcing one path?
Should you pivot roles from? Well, first of all, again, Tavion, I don't know exactly, where you are currently, but you don't want to focus on how long. If I'm reading this incorrectly, we could talk offline, but you don't want to focus on, all right, I should do a year here and then pivot. Focus more right now on being the best at wherever you're at, being the best associate, being the best clinical. Focus there first, then the timeline, because all that stuff it's gonna fall into place for you. The promotions, all those things, they are gonna happen more naturally than you saying, I'm only gonna give it a year and then I'm gonna pivot. That's never gonna work because the timelines never work out. You could have sometimes it could be even in your favor. You could say, I'm going to be here for 6 months, and then within 3 months, an opening comes for a promotion. You don't know. So I would focus more on being the best at whatever role that is and not a timeline. And then if time does come where you feel like you deserve that opening or it's time to pivot, you have that conversation with your manager. And if you don't like the answers or they're telling you there is no room or then you could worry about pivoting somewhere else. But don't give it a timeline right now because there is no timeline. If someone tells you that, that's made up. Worry about being the best in that role, and then everything else will fall into place.
That's all I got today for you, Joe.
Awesome. Well, thank you, James. I appreciate all that. I know you're a little sick today too, so I'm sorry I'm torturing you.
I'm dying over here.
I'm
pushing through.
Killing you. Sorry about that, buddy.
No,
but
you're good, dude. We got to show. The show must go on.
Show must go on. But thank you, James, and thank you to everyone, seriously, for Tavion, great questions. I appreciate all that. For everyone else asking questions, thank you so much. Thank you for joining. As always, guys, we're going to be doing these every Monday and Wednesday. If something does come up, obviously, we'll let you know. But every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Again, if you want to see this recording, go on YouTube, Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching, and subscribe. For all the lobby members that are listening, please make sure you give the promo code Licata. You see that on the screen. Give that when you're reaching out because, again, guys, we want you all, if you're trying to break into this industry, the Rep Path Academy is the answer. So reach out to me. Give me that promo code, entitle you to more discounts. But want to hear from you guys because we're helping guys get in, helping, reps get in every day to break into this industry. We want you to be a part of it too. We want to minimize those frustrations that you're having, about trying to break in. So please reach out to us. You could DM me, go on reppath.com to learn more, and love to have you guys join. But that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you guys on Wednesday. Have a great day.